Welcome to Crisis and Capital, where world events shape financial landscapes. In today's episode, we dive into the global inflation crisis, a rising tide affecting economies worldwide. Inflation has been surging at unprecedented rates, sparking fears of a global economic slowdown, with significant consequences for businesses, consumers, and governments alike. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and understand the forces shaping our financial world, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more in-depth analysis right here on Crisis and Capital. 10. Supply chain disruptions. At number 10, we begin with supply chain disruptions. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, the global supply chain has struggled to return to normal. Lockdowns, labor shortages, and the closure of factories have led to significant bottlenecks in production and transportation. The imbalance between supply and demand has sent prices for goods, ranging from electronics to food products, soaring. With goods stuck at ports or factories unable to operate at full capacity, prices for essential products continue to climb. And, as global demand surges, businesses face rising costs that they inevitably pass on to consumers. 9. Energy prices skyrocketing. Number 9 brings us to energy prices. Energy is a key driver of inflation because it affects almost every sector, from manufacturing to transportation to agriculture. The surge in oil, gas, and electricity prices, exacerbated by geopolitical tensions, particularly the Russia-Ukraine war, has pushed inflation higher. Countries that depend on imported energy have seen their bills rise dramatically, affecting the price of goods and services across the board. The global energy crisis is not just an environmental issue, but also an economic one, as higher energy costs lead to inflation in nearly every corner of the world. 8. Labor market shortages and wage increases. At number 8, we examine labor market shortages. With many economies still recovering from the pandemic, there has been a persistent shortage of workers in key sectors, particularly in healthcare, manufacturing, and agriculture. This shortage has led to wage increases as companies compete for talent. While higher wages are beneficial for workers, they also push up the cost of doing business. Businesses pass these higher labor costs on to consumers, driving inflation even further. The labor market is not just about finding workers, it's about balancing the needs of the workforce with the rising costs for employers. 7. The impact of government stimulus. Number 7 focuses on the impact of government stimulus. In response to the economic shocks caused by the pandemic, governments around the world issued massive stimulus packages to support individuals and businesses. While these measures were essential for short-term survival, they had unintended long-term consequences. With an influx of money into the economy and a limited supply, the excess liquidity led to inflationary pressures. 6. Rising raw material costs. At number 6, we turn to rising raw material costs. Commodities such as wheat, steel, and copper have seen their prices spike, and this trend is a significant factor driving global inflation. The cost of raw materials is a key input for many industries, from construction to technology. The disruptions caused by global events, like the war in Ukraine and supply chain breakdowns, have limited the availability of these raw materials, pushing prices higher. For many industries, these cost increases are passed along to consumers, leading to inflation in essential goods like housing, food, and electronics. 5. Central bank policies and interest rates. Number 5 takes us to the role of central banks. In response to rising inflation, many central banks have raised interest rates in an attempt to cool down the economy. However, these actions, while aimed at reducing inflation, have been a double-edged sword. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive, which can lead to reduced investment and slower economic growth. At the same time, these rate hikes affect consumer spending, as people face higher costs for loans, mortgages, and credit. While central banks are trying to combat inflation, their actions can also have adverse effects, slowing down growth and increasing unemployment. 4. Global trade tensions. At number 4, we look at global trade tensions. The ongoing trade war between major economic powers like the US and China, and the rise of protectionist policies, have disrupted international trade. Tariffs and restrictions have led to higher import costs, which trickle down to consumers in the form of higher prices for goods. Increased tariffs and trade barriers make it harder for countries to access cheaper goods and services from abroad, contributing to inflation. 3. Climate change and natural disasters. At number 3, we turn to climate change. Over the last few years, the impact of extreme weather events has become a significant contributor to inflation. From droughts to floods to wildfires, natural disasters have damaged crops, disrupted supply chains, and wiped out entire industries. For instance, the destruction of crops in major agricultural hubs increases food prices. The rise in natural disasters has also created supply shortages for raw materials, from timber to metals. 2. Currency devaluation and global trade imbalances. Number 2 examines currency devaluation and global trade imbalances. As countries around the world face economic struggles, many have resorted to printing more money or devaluing their currencies to cope with the crisis. This can lead to inflation, especially in nations where currency devaluation occurs. As currencies lose value, imports become more expensive, leading to higher costs for goods and services. The imbalance between countries that export and import goods also amplifies inflationary pressures. 1. Geopolitical instability and wars. And finally, at number 1, we address geopolitical instability and wars. The Russia-Ukraine war is the most recent example of how conflict can escalate global inflation. The war has disrupted energy supplies, led to skyrocketing food prices, and shifted global supply chains in unpredictable ways. In addition to the war in Ukraine, there are ongoing tensions in Taiwan, the Middle East, and other regions that have the potential to disrupt global markets. These conflicts create uncertainty in the markets, driving up commodity prices, particularly in energy and food. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, subscribe to our channel before you go. Thanks for watching.